Welcome to a realistic week of dinners and some pre-made breakfast for my small family of 4. Nothing crazy, just some cozy casseroles and some alternatives to my favorite takeout meals. I'm a busy part-time working mom, so I need simple but wholesome meals that everyone in the family is going to love. This is a little bit of a longer video, so it's perfect to play on in the background while you are also preparing your meals this week. Batch prepping. So right now I am taking apart a family pack of chicken thighs. I'm pulling the bones out and cutting off the trimmings and making a quick instant pot broth for a chicken soup later this week. And then I am going to be using this family pack of chicken thighs to do 2 chicken meals. Tonight we are doing King Ranch chicken, and then tomorrow or Saturday we will be doing an orange chicken. And then I'm going to be doing a braised pork shoulder chicken soup. So those are the dinners for this week. And then I also am going to do a breakfast casserole and cottage cheese pancakes like I do every week. So we are just going to hop in and do some meal prepping for the week. I love doing this because it's easier than doing it in the crock pot because it's so much less space. I'm going to use the crock pot function on my Instant Pot because I don't need the broth today. So I do think slow cooker broth is a lot better than Instant Pot broth. Right now what I'm doing is I'm just pulling the bones out from the chicken thighs and then taking the bones and the skin and putting it into the Instant Pot and the trimmings, and that's all going to create like a really nice flavorful broth for some really easy and delicious chicken noodle soup. And it's exactly that time of year for a good chicken noodle soup, so I'm really excited. I'll say because we've been doing chicken thighs so much, because they are just so much more affordable, I haven't been loving their flavor as much. So I actually have been kind of incorporating a few more chicken breast recipes or purchasing family pack chicken breasts because they are just, I don't know, there's something about, I think it's just because I have been eating chicken thighs for the past 2 years because they are just so much more, they do have more flavor, but they have a very specific flavor too. And if you're eating them all the time, like we do, because they are so much cheaper, you just get a little sick of them. Okay, so I'm gonna throw this away and wash my hands and get the skin off and then get everything separated. I'm going to be making a very simple bone broth. Because I want to be able to get all the meat that is extra on the bones, I'm actually not going to be putting any vegetable cuttings into it because I don't want to have to pick through the vegetable cuttings and the bones and the meat. So I just want to have to pick the bones out. So I'm just going to do enough water to fill everything, because I'm just doing this for one serving of, or one recipe. I'm going to also add some Redmond salt. I am going to separate the bones from the actual chicken meat. This is after I've already sliced the bones out. Honestly, the easiest way to do this, in my experience, unless you have super sharp knives or you are a master deboner, is actually using a good pair of kitchen scissors. But I actually broke my kitchen scissors. They just broke completely in half like 2 weeks ago. So I'm having to use just my hands and this not super great knife, but yeah, I always just use kitchen scissors, and I will be investing in a decent pair of kitchen scissors pretty soon here. But just cutting around the bone as closely as possible. And I'm actually not being super precise on the actual bone because I am okay with having a little bit of meat in the broth because I'm going to use it in my chicken soup. So it's actually
not a huge deal to me at this point. I'm not being super sentimental about the bone being left on, or the meat being left on the bone for that reason. And then the fat, I will strain out when I'm done making the broth, but it adds a lot of really good flavor to the broth, and it adds a lot more collagen to the broth. So I'm adding that into the Instant Pot, but I'm not using any vegetable cuttings because I want to be able to strain it quicker.
Like 2 big pinches. And that's pretty much all I'm doing for this recipe. And then I'm just going to slow cook it for, what time is it? It's 12. So I think I'm just gonna slow cook it for 24 hours. Am I gonna be home by then tomorrow?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm gonna be home by then. Well, I'll just pull it out before I go to work in the morning. So we'll do 24 hours slow cook. Actually, well, I'm just gonna set it for 24 hours, but I probably will turn it off tomorrow morning before I go to work. So it'll be closer to like 18 hours. Okay, so I decided I'm going to do the baked chicken for the shredded chicken for the King Ranch chicken casserole. So I'm going to set the temperature for 405 degrees. Seasoned chicken with salt and pepper, and then I'm going to, this is really simple, sometimes I will, if I'm making shredded chicken, sometimes I will just boil it, but I don't love, my only issue with boiling or poaching chicken for shredded chicken is that chicken thighs are already a very moist cut of chicken. Sorry for saying moist for those of you that hate that word. Since this is going in a casserole, I don't want it to be more, I don't want the chicken to be any more wet, I guess, than it has to be. So I think baking it is going to make sure that it stays drier than, stays dry enough so it doesn't retain too much moisture. So I'm gonna we're gonna preheat the oven, throw those in when it's ready to go. I'm going to do a baked orange chicken. And what is cool about this is that you could make this, I'm doing a cornstarch slurry. You could make this and do the slurry and the cornstarch and everything. And then all you have to do when you go to make it is throw it on top of the pan with hot oil. And then you can even pre-make the sauce and have the sauce ready to go as well. So that's what I'm going to try to accomplish now. So right now I'm just cutting everything into decently even bite-sized pieces. And then I will be making the slurry. And a slurry is basically and I learned this from Pro Home Cooks. And it's basically just a really simple way, or kind of like a cheat code to not having to individually bread things, kind of getting that same fried chicken feel with like half of the work. So that's what I'm doing right now. Kind of 1-inch cubes. It's a little harder to get like the even bits with chicken thighs as easy as like it is with chicken breasts, but it doesn't really matter. But this is why I love using these big family packs of chicken thighs, because you can get so much use out of them, because you can make broth. You can get like 3 or 4 meals out of them, especially if it's just a small family. We only have, it's me and my husband, and then we have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. My 1-year-old eats more than my 3-year-old does. And so, especially if you're a small family like that, you can find, a big pack of chicken, bone on, skin on chicken thighs, and you can eat for so inexpensively. And for Sunday, I'm doing the braised pork, like an pork glaze, apple cider. It's like an apple cider glazed pork Boston butt roast that I actually cut in half. When they're really cheap, I'll cut them in half because we never go through them quick enough if I make the whole thing. And I usually get pretty sick of eating pork after like I've had 2 meals in a row of it. So cutting them in half is perfect because then I can separate them between like 3 or 4 weeks when I kind of give over eating pork for 2 days straight. So for the slurry, 3 eggs in 1 bowl, and we're gonna do, so for the slurry we're doing 3 eggs in a bowl. That's gonna get whisked up. First I mix the chicken in the egg mixture, and then I am just going to coat it all in this flour mixture. And then I'm just going to get a slotted spoon and transfer that to, okay, that's gonna go ahead and get washed, get it all coated. And what you can do, what I like to do, I love these big glass meal prep containers. I got these ones actually at Aldi, which is crazy. And I just get it really nice to mix up. Make sure everything is coated. Give it a really good mix. And then I just leave this in the fridge until I need it. I either make it Saturday or Monday. So this is just gonna chill in the fridge for the next couple days, and then I'll go ahead and make the sauce too.
For the sauce, I ended up using leftover mandarin oranges that I had. You know how you buy those big bags of them? We never go through a whole thing. So I wanted to use that up. And then I am saving the skins to kind of add into the final dish. And then I'm using the juice over a saucepan with some soy sauce and sugar and a little bit of cornstarch to thicken it up. And then I'm just keeping it in the fridge.
It is Friday. My goal is to finish up this broth and then making a couple of bulk breakfasts and then getting at least the rice for dinner tonight made. That way, all I have to do when I get home tonight is throw the chicken on the pan with my orange sauce that's already been made, and then just heating up some vegetables and reheating the rice.
I ended up leaving the chicken bones in the broth for a little under 24 hours. All of the meat pretty much was fully off of the bone, so it was really easy just to strain out the meat and the bones from this, so that way I can pour it straight into some mason jars, and then I will pick the meat off of the bones and put that back into the broth for my chicken noodle soup that I'm making next week. I will probably just throw the bones away and save the chicken skins probably as like a treat for my dog. Or sometimes I've rendered it down to make chicken schmaltz, which is just that, but I find that I don't really get enough to make it worth me rendering it, so I generally don't save it unless I really want the flavor, which it actually does have a pretty good flavor, but there's some recipes that you can use that for that is really good, but I just really, the time commitment isn't necessarily worth it for me, so I usually just forgo rendering the chicken fat.
I think that's really nice about making broth in this way, as opposed to what usually people do is like adding a ton of veggies and stuff to it, which I still do that on occasion, but I've literally just been putting the bones in the water with some salt and even some apple cider vinegar if I have it. But the thing that is so nice about this is that you really don't have to do any straining. So I'm leaving all this. Oh shit. That is why you make sure your broth is cooled down all the way before pouring it into a jar.
Now I'm just separating the bones from the meat, just to get it all out, and then I'm just going to throw it right back in with the broth. Even with the spilling tobacco, I still got 2 full mason jars of yummy broth.
Going to make an egg biscuit casserole. This is a recipe my sister-in-law always makes this for us when we, like, after I have a baby, and it's so delicious. And the only thing that I add to it is cottage cheese for a little extra protein without having to use too many eggs. This recipe generally uses some form of like ground sausage or something, but I have this half pack of bacon that I really need to use up. We don't eat a ton of bacon just because it creates like a pretty big mess, and it takes a lot of time to clean up, and it takes a while to make, so I usually only make it if I have it for like a specific recipe. This half pack of bacon into like little clusters and then cook them up really quick, and then I'm going to add them into my breakfast casserole.
While the bacon cooked, I went ahead and prepped the rest of the breakfast casserole. Really, all you need is some eggs, cottage cheese, kind of jumbo frozen biscuit. You can definitely make those on your own if you want to get crazy with it. But I love just buying the ones from Aldi because they're less than $2 for a tube of them. 7 eggs, and then about half of a container of the cottage cheese. I'm using cottage cheese from Target because my Aldi has been out of cottage cheese and my Costco has not been carrying the good culture, so I had to buy this from Target. Getting cottage cheese is kind of hit or miss whenever I go to Costco or Aldi, so sometimes I have to run to Target to grab that. And then you can add really whatever else you want to add. So sometimes I will add some sweet potatoes, or I will add some onions and zucchini, some stuff to like maybe increase the fiber content. So I've added chia seeds to this, and that has been really delicious. Obviously you're going to want to add some salt and pepper, and then maybe even some garlic and onion powder if you like that. And it's really such a customizable breakfast. You can definitely blend the eggs and the cottage cheese together in a blender or with an immersion blender. The only thing I will say is that putting the eggs in the blender can add air to the eggs, and I think personally that it cooks up kind of weird and gives a weird texture. So usually I will either blend the cottage cheese first, or I will just whisk it all together if I just don't really mind the cottage cheese texture in the end result. But if you don't love like the lumpiness of the cottage cheese, just blend it first and then add it to the eggs, as opposed to blending everything all together first. This is a very simple breakfast to assemble. Lay out the biscuits. I use one of these glass casserole dishes for the eggs over top of it, and then sprinkle the top with cheese, and then I just bake it to whatever the instructions of biscuits instructs you to do.
Look how freaking delicious this looks. Once it is fully cooled off, I am going to cut it up and then put it into a meal prep container.
I always like to do some sort of pancake for a make ahead breakfast because it's so easy and my daughter loves it. So usually I do a 3-ingredient oat cottage cheese pancake, but I was out of oats and I had a big container of coconut flour that my mom had given me, and I didn't love it, but with maple syrup over top of it, my daughter still consumed it and she liked it, so it turned out okay. It was kind of an experiment. So I'm using about half a tub of cottage cheese, and then some eggs, and then about a cup of coconut flour, and then I use some baking powder. I usually don't add any kind of sugar or anything to my make ahead pancakes because we already put maple syrup over top of them when we eat them. Instead of baking them individually or making them on a skillet or anything, I just poured them right into my cast iron skillet and threw it in the oven, so that way I wasn't having to stand over the skillet making pancakes forever. If you've never heard of King Ranch chicken, it is one of the yummiest casseroles. It's almost like a deconstructed enchilada with a little bit more of a southwestern flair than a Mexican flair. I cook up some peppers and onions in the skillet, and then I am chopping up some corn tortillas to mix in there as well. And then because I don't like to use any kind of like cream of chicken soup or things for my casseroles, I like to just do that myself. It's so easy. All you have to do is just some butter and flour, and then you deglaze the pan with like vinegar or broth or whatever that will go with your casserole. And then you just add those peppers in, and then you add some diced tomatoes with green chilies, and then your cooked shredded chicken. It's so easy because since the chicken is already cooked, you just have to throw it in the oven with some cheese, and then I top it with sour cream and verde salsa and then some chopped up green onions, and it's delicious. Now, I really front loaded most of the work for this orange chicken the day before. When I was doing all the meal prep, I did the slurry and I made the orange chicken sauce. So all I'm doing today is just making up some rice and then cooking the chicken, literally pouring that orange sauce over top of it. I bought a giant bag of frozen veggies from Costco, and that has been one of the best things that I've ever done because all I have to do is pull out 2 cups of the veggies, and then I just have to throw it in the microwave and I can add it to any meal, and that's pretty much just what I did for this one. And my husband said that this is the best orange chicken that I have made, so I'm just getting better and better at it. Sundays are my classic roast days. You better believe that every Sunday the crock pot is coming out. It's pretty early in the morning and I'm just getting ready my roast. This is a Boston butt roast that I purchased that was on sale. I cut it in half and I made pulled pork sandwiches the week before. And this week I'm using the other half to do an apple cider pot roast, and it was actually really good and perfect for the crock pot. After thawing it out for about a day, I'm pulling it out to rise to room temperature, and then I just seasoned the outside with salt, pepper, and I think I also added paprika. I will link all of the recipes that I did not just come up on my own. I'll link them down below. This was a recipe that I had found on Pinterest, and I am going to first start up by cooking up some onions and some apples all together, and it smelled so good. I'm using red onions and just a good crispy apple because you don't want them to get too soggy too easily. After those got all cooked down, I added the Boston butt roast for about 5 minutes on the pan for each side just to get the outside nice and braised before it went into crock pot. Always recommend braising any large piece of meat that you put into the crock pot. I think it just adds a depth of flavor, and then it also keeps it from getting too soggy, which tends to happen when putting things in the crock pot. And it sat in the crock pot for about 8 hours. I served it with potatoes and then just some butter and bread. Everybody loved it. My daughter loved the juices from it. She just ate it straight up like a soup, and then it makes for great leftovers. I even used the leftovers later that week to make quesadillas.
Wednesday for me is kind of the last day of my week because we get paid. So this is the last meal, and we are doing some chicken noodle soup in the Instant Pot. The thing I love about Instant Pot is that you can there's a set function. So I can set this to start on my way home from work tonight, chop a bunch of veggies, throw them in the bottom, saute them with some garlic and onion and some spices. I'm gonna chop up an onion and some garlic and saute that in here. I'm finally down to my very last onion of the week. The only thing, I want to chop up as much of these carrots as possible because I don't need them for anything next week. So I'm going to go ahead and use them up. And the only thing I need is I need to save 1 stalk of that celery and 1 stalk of like 2 carrots for my lunch today. And maybe some of this onion for my lunch. So I'm going to chop up this onion. My eyes, oh no. when I got this Instant Pot has kind of been like this really awesome thing for me. I had been really wanting one, and I just told myself I'm going to get one from a thrift store. And every time I went to a thrift store, I was like, Lord, please have there be an Instant Pot there. And I went to my sister's. We were visiting my sister over Christmas, and we went to go visit an elderly lady friend of hers. And we were just sitting and chatting. My daughter-in-law gave me an Instant Pot for Christmas, and I have never used it. And she said she had it for like 5 years. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been wanting an Instant Pot. And she goes, oh, you can have mine. And so she gave me this Instant Pot. It was brand new in the box. And during the wintertime, I use this at least every other day. I'm just sauteing the onions and garlic for a few minutes until it's nice and fragrant. And I'm also, just to thicken up the soup a bit, I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of flour after this has been going for a few minutes. Ooh. So we have the broth that I made earlier this week, and then all this fat on top of it. We're just gonna pour all of that into my Instant Pot. All that is going to go in there. So this is a little bit of chicken in it, not a ton, which is why I'm using a lot more veggies than I usually do. Since there's not going to be a ton of meat in this, I just want to kind of thicken it up with the vegetables. We're going to do a generous helping, like half a tablespoon. Maybe actually that's a little bit too much. Like 1/4 of a tablespoon maybe of salt. Add some fennel seed.
And when you need this,
Rosemary. We are going to put the lid on. And then I'm going to set this to pressure cook when I'm on my way home from work. So it will start when I'm on my way home. So that way, by the time I get home, it'll be ready to add the noodles to it.
Unfortunately, my power went out when I was gone, so my Instant Pot did not start. So I had to switch it to a stock pot when I got home, but it still turned out delicious. My whole family loves a good bowl of chicken noodle soup.